Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of How to Get Away with Staffing. My name's Colin LeBeau, president here at Foxhire, and I've got Diane Prince, the founder at Recruiting Agency 360, recruiting coach extraordinaire. Welcome.
Hey, Colin.
How are you?
Great. Glad to see you.
Yeah, you too. You're keeping the good weather down there for you, aren't you? Because we're up here in the snow
Oh
today. A
my
lot of
God.
the country is.
I know. I hear it's crazy. I know. I'm very fortunate to be in Phoenix right now.
Yeah, this is the time of year for that. So,
Oh my
uh,
gosh. Yes.
super excited to talk to you today. If people are not familiar with your work, I think they'll be impressed by how you help people grow their staffing businesses. So I'm excited to learn a little bit about that. But I always like to just ask a really interesting question. And I found that most people didn't dream of being a recruiter as a kid.
Okay.
They somehow found their way into this industry,
Yeah.
and they love it and they stay and they want to keep doing it, right? So what was that story for you? How did you get into the staffing world?
Yeah. I love this question because while I did not dream about being in staffing as a kid, I did get into it very intentionally and not accidentally.
Cool.
So it started with my husband and I, my then husband. We wanted to build a company. We decided we had never been entrepreneurs before, and I had just graduated. I had a master's degree in French literature, and I was teaching French. I was working at a computer distributor, and we had the idea of what if we could build a business, work together, build a business that we could sell, that we could, build up so that we could exit. And so that's how we arrived at staffing, because we were looking at what are different kinds of businesses we could do. And we were thinking about all different kinds of businesses, talking to friends, talking to family. And then was one dinner with my dad, and he said, my dad was in title insurance, and he said, why don't you start a temp agency for title insurance? And I had temped through college and grad school. That's how I knew about
Yeah,
temping. And it was a great idea. So that we ran with that one.
that's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, intentionally starting a business to exit. That's very interesting. In fact, I was actually a friend recommended this book to me. It's called Built to Sell. I don't know if you ever
Okay. Okay.
read that book, but yeah, very, very interesting. It's similar to our CEO story a little bit, because he didn't actually start a staffing business, but he started a business to support recruiting agencies, and he went in very intentionally as well. Like, what's the best space? How can I, so
Yeah.
very cool to see you go and attack that. Um, Tell us a little bit more about how did it go after that? Like, what happened?
Yeah, and just one thing too, like I think a vision is really important. So I
Yeah.
think because a lot of times when entrepreneurs start a company, they might start it because it's a good idea, like it solves a problem for the world, but then realize it doesn't solve their problem, or it's something that they're not like, it's really not working for their life, or it's so. And a business might be successful, but that doesn't mean that it's successful for the founder. So that is why I
Yeah.
think it's so important to start with your vision and how you want to live your life and what you want to get out of it.
Right.
So yeah, and then what was your question? How did it go?
Well, how did it go after that? Yeah, like tell us. You said you wanted to build it to sell, and so how did it go? Like, tell us a little bit more about the journey there.
Yeah, I mean, we just started by interviewing people. I was still at my job at first, and back then it was you put ads in the newspaper, and I had a PO box, and I would check it every during my lunch break. And
Cool.
so the first day that we took out a 3-line ad in the Los Angeles Times. And the first resume that I got, I couldn't believe, I like cried. I couldn't believe that someone actually sent me a resume. I was 27 years old, and I quit my
Yeah.
job. I quit my job the next day. Right. We got it and then figured it out. I mean, and
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, and when I quit, I mean, people were saying, "Oh, this is such a big risk." I said, "I'm going to start my own company." And I just thought, no, like it's a bigger risk sitting here in this cube and like you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, because I knew that wasn't me. And
Yeah.
it just really started from there, and that knew nothing, like literally did not know even about like what workers' comp was until I placed my first
All
person.
the fun things. Workers' comp is the best.
And just really figured it out, like payroll. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people think they don't want to get into temp staffing because they're intimidated. I mean, we just did it,
Yeah.
and we didn't even have an EOR at first, so it was like we just did it ourselves. So it was
Yeah.
pretty nuts. But then we just figured it out. we actually bought a book. Back then they had, those dummies books, those like,
Yeah.
there was one that
Big
was,
yellow ones.
yeah, how to start a temp agency for dummies. So that was our guide.
Wow.
And then, so prior to when I quit my job, we wrote a business plan. We read that book, and then I mean, so much of it was trial and error. Like we, basically
Yeah.
like used other people's timesheets and copied those, and like just kind of stole a
You
lot of
figure it
stuff.
out. That's how it works. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. It's so funny because I feel like a lot of the staffing firms that start today are in the same place. They are trying to figure it out, right? They're asking for help with templates. They'll come to us and say, how do I do this? They'll ask about pricing and markups. And it's
Yeah.
just a lot of entrepreneurs, people that don't want to be on the corporate ladder. They want to control their own destiny. It's, so much has changed, but so much has stayed the same, I feel like, because that story is still happening today all over the place.
Yeah. And still the way that we got our first client was, and we thought, because my dad worked in title insurance, and we thought that he was at Chicago Title, and we met with their head of HR. Like we thought that was going to be an easy client, and they did end up being a client of ours eventually, but they weren't our first client, and they weren't our biggest client. And we got our first client because that very first resume I mentioned. So we interviewed her, and I didn't
Wow.
even know, like, I didn't know what these roles even were, like what the details were. And so we interviewed our first person, then we did reference checks, and I just called, and that's how we got our biggest client, was Fidelity
Wow.
National Title, just from calling reference, and reference checks still work. Some of the old school tactics still
It's
really work.
true. They do. It's just making those jump from one connection to the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. Oh, I can hear the passion in your voice, and I love to hear people that care about the space, because it's a very unique space. So what keeps you passionate, or why do you love serving staffing agencies now that you're not, running your own desk?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun for me to be in something that, like, because I've done this for so many. So I've built two staffing agencies that I've exited. One
Mhm.
I sold to a public company, and then K-Force bought them. Then we sold it to Hall Kenyon, then they sold it to K-Force, and then we had another one that I sold to the former chairman of Adecco. So like figuring, like, once I realized that the experience I had, not only in staffing but in also entrepreneurship, I had a clothing business after that. So just it really is fun having, like, since I have all that deep experience. I've also been a teacher. I've trained as a life coach too. So I work for a life coach startup. So using all of my experiences I have, and then
Yeah.
realizing that I have these technical skills, and like actually how to do it. I have this kind of unique skill set. So that's really fun for me at this stage of my career, to help other people to be successful.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Being a recruiter is sometimes being a life coach, honestly. I feel like. So no, that's great. And I guess, what are you seeing right now? Right? Like, what are the recruiting agencies struggling with right now that you find yourself helping them with consistently?
Yeah, a few different things. I mean, there's always struggles with employees. That's one thing that's like, that will probably always be. And then that's across the board, any kind of industry. So that is one thing that I help people with, is how to scale, how to manage their team, how to build a team, how to deal with underperforming people, things like that, how to create corporate culture. So that's one common thing that people struggle with. I mean, sometimes it's their co-founders or their partners, that is a very common thing too, is helping people with those kinds of issues. And then of course biz dev, so some people I work with are just getting started, and so it's like getting their first clients. Other ones are like, I just got off a call with a group that they're doing really well, and they want to scale. So like
Scale it up. Yeah.
yeah, like I'll work with people who have a lot of traction, but they don't have a sales process in place. So they know they could just do so much more. So a lot of times it's biz dev, and building systems and processes. And
Yeah.
yeah, and other things, it's about really like the experience of being a founder and an entrepreneur. And I always love talking about building to exit, and the things that you need to have in place, and of course recurring revenue. So sometimes
Recurring revenue.
yeah, sometimes people come to me who are doing direct hire or retained, or even fractional or embedded, and so I love teaching people the ins and outs of staffing and how that works.
Yeah. And that is the thing. Like, I don't think a lot of people know, and you'll see people ask about, how can I sell my recruiting business? And if it's direct hire, it's really hard, because you don't have the multiple, you just can't get a multiple on EBITDA, because you don't have the recurring revenue that's predictable, that they can, base their valuation on. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I had never done direct hire really. And then I worked at as tech staffing or tech recruiting agency in LA hired me to help them to build out their contracting division. But I also I did direct hire and I did
Nice.
like, I also had a desk and I was like, this is insane. I mean, and you're starting over every single month and it's just,
Every time.
yeah. I mean,
You're
it's
chasing
right.
that 30K, 40K check, you know?
Right. Which is fun when you get those checks, but it's also like, it's a grind,
Feast
man.
or famine. That's what we say. You know, it's feast or famine. You can get a bunch and then you can get nothing for a long time, especially when the hiring, when the market's down. And that's where that staffing revenue comes in as, you know, really helpful for those direct hire agencies that don't rely on staffing as their main source of revenue, but it is super helpful to have that supplemental income as well.
Right. And with staffing, it's not like, like you'll hear in direct hire or even embedded search, like you'll hear, oh, we're going to take it in-house. They can't really do that with staffing. They really need an external agency to do temp staffing. So you're not going to hear that, "Oh, we've decided to take our temp staffing in-house." It just isn't really something that you can even like really legally do without misclassifying your employees.
Yeah, very difficult to do that for sure.
Mhm.
So you talked about biz dev, and that being something you like helping with a lot. So what are the biggest challenges some of the agencies you work with are facing right now from a biz dev or marketing perspective? What's holding them back? What are you trying to help them overcome?
Yeah, sometimes it's just not really knowing what to do. A lot of people have like sometimes people often come from recruiting and they're really good at recruiting, but they've
Yeah.
never done sales. So sometimes one thing that people commonly ask me is what's the best way? And I really feel like it's individual, like it's customized. So when people will come to me and they've done like some program or whatever that's like this is the blueprint or this is the way to do it, but it doesn't necessarily work because it doesn't work for everybody. And
Yeah.
then it's only lasts so long because then when everybody's doing it or they're buying templates or they're hiring someone to write their copy, those things don't really work. What you have to do is find what's working. First of all, you have to have the right offer. You have to have the right niche. If you're in the wrong niche or if you're in a space without demand, it's just not going to get off the ground. But if
Right.
you have to know if you have the right offer, then you can analyze that, the elements of a sale are attraction. Are you getting people? Are you getting people who want to talk to you? Are you attracting people? Um, are you closing the sale? Are you able to close? So these are the things that you want to look at in like the health of your sales process. So it's attraction. Are you closing? If you're not closing right away at the beginning, which often happens, how are you nurturing? So you can really like rank yourself in those four things. It's your offer, your niche, your attraction, closing, and nurturing. So you can like, so different people struggle in
Yeah.
different places. Not everybody's the same.
Right. Yeah. In that pipeline, you know, there's these different steps, and you're trying to move somebody from the beginning to the end, and there's sometimes can hold you back. Certain areas just can be problem. I guess, how has that pipeline or that process changed recently? Like, have you seen a big change in the last maybe 2 years or so that you thought was interesting?
Yeah, because I'm a fan of automation. I'm a fan of cold email outreach, but that's changed a lot. And
Yeah.
it's changed from what I'm seeing because so many people are it's so much more accessible or like known that people are doing it. And because there was such a in recruiting was so hot in 21 and
Yes.
it was like anybody could, it was like, I don't know. I think this.
Everybody opened an agency. Everybody did in 21,
Yes.
22. Yeah.
Right. And they were, and it was really easy to have $1 million desk or, make whatever. So there's a lot of like biz dev kind of programs or services that started doing email automation and it
Yeah.
started getting so saturated. Now here's the thing, it still works, but it only works if you are using your own tone of voice. So what I love to do, I totally nerd out on this, is getting really good at your voice of customer because I used to say that consistency mattered more than copy. Now I think it's probably equal or even more copy is over consistency now in some ways. I mean, consistency is still really important. I've closed a
Yeah.
deal on the 23rd email, but you really want to be able to, you want to write your copy in a way that your clients are saying, he read my mind. Like, I cannot
They're
believe,
speaking my language.
yes,
Yeah.
like, I can't believe, like, you totally read my mind with that email. I could have said that. And the reality is I teach people a way to do it so that they actually are things that your ideal clients have
Sure.
said. So you don't
Yeah,
have
of
to
course.
sit there and think like, oh, what should I write about? There's methods to do it to really tap into your voice of your customer.
Interesting. Yeah, I know exactly what we're talking about. Email sequence software made it super easy to send out hundreds or thousands of emails from individuals rather than like corporate emailing systems.
Mm-hmm.
Way more than it had been before. And that created this like massive, all the buyers were put into these sequences by all the sellers. And they
Yeah.
got used to it. You know, they got used to it, especially when the sequencing software created templates and stuff like that for people to use. It's like the same email, everybody's sending the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, tone of
Yeah.
voice, interesting. Copy. How do you think that's going to change with AI? Like, do you think it's going to make it even worse with AI copywriting? Like, you just have to write it yourself. You've got to really make sure you're speaking their language. What are
You
your
know what's
thoughts there?
interesting? Well, what's interesting is like even before AI, people, like, if you think about it, when they sit down to write an email, they generally start talking like a robot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you,
yeah.
you know, and that was something I taught like even before AI. So now it's like in some way it's still yes, you risk that. Like, I think AI is great and it's such a good tool. I use AI as a writing assistant, you
Yeah,
know,
for
so
sure.
like it can create like I don't know, it can create templates and things for you, but it's so important to use your own voice and not just send out the AI generated messages. So AI can be a really, really useful tool when you know the right prompts to write, when you're
Mhm.
using it the right way. You know, I talk to it like it's a person, you know, I'll
Yeah,
just like that. I mean, one little trick I'll do is like for email subject lines, which are really important. So
yeah.
I'll ask ChatGPT, I'll say like, here is an email I want to write, or I'll give the gist of it and I'll say, give me 15 potential subject header, irresistible to open subject header lines that are similar to National Enquirer headlines. And then I'll see what
Nice.
they say. And
Wow.
then I make edits and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of fun with it.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I tend to be like a long writer. I try to get my thoughts out and I like add a lot of context. So I try to use it to be concise, more concise.
Yeah.
Like I'll write like a whole paragraph, like, and I'll say, can you make this like 3 sentences? Help me be short.
Yes. I
So
do
that's
that too. Yeah, rewrite this like I'm talking to a fifth grader, or like with smart brevity, I'll say that too. And yeah.
there you go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Because yeah, I think that's going to be a big change here going forward is like how to properly use that and weave that into your process as it becomes more pervasive and not let it, you know, sort of ruin your marketing outreach.
And what people need to know is AI is not, and automation is not a substitute. So a lot of people are looking for solutions. So
Yeah,
if they're looking for biz dev solutions and then they look to automation, the thing to know is you have to know what works first. You have to have that offer. You have to have the right timing in the market and the right messaging, and then put it into AI. Like, we're using a lot of clay automations now. We're having a lot of fun with that. And but you have to have traction first. You have to test it and see what works. Otherwise, you're
yeah.
just automating something that's not working and it's a waste of time
You're
and money.
automating failure. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, 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 yes.
Cool. No, that's really helpful. I think, and there's a difference between marketing different types of services, right? Like having the right offer, like you said, is really important. And I think there's a difference between marketing direct hire services and staffing services. So what are your thoughts there? Like, how do those things differ? Because a lot of the direct hire recruiters don't know how to market the staffing side.
Yeah, I find that so interesting too, because it does seem like it's a difficult shift for direct hire recruiters to market the staffing. I think
Yeah,
a lot of it is just not knowing and not being educated in how staffing works, because in a lot of ways, I mean, often it's the same buyer.
for
So
sure.
what I think is important, and one of my friends, do you know Kim Henderson?
I
She
don't. I would love to meet Kim, but no,
Oh,
I don't.
she's amazing. Yeah, she's a good one to interview actually. And she has a great master class on client share. And what she talks about is finding out like the entire picture. So like say you are doing direct hire, just ask, like, where are you using contractors? Where are you using temp staff? And then
Right.
also knowing there are employers of record, like Foxhire, like there's people who can help you to do all, like, it's not that complicated when you have the right
Right.
sources and, the right resources, which are accessible. You can get payroll funded, things like that. But I
Right.
think I think it's education. So I always tell people just ask. Don't go into it thinking that you have to pitch and you have to know everything. Just
Right.
find out, like, hey, where are you using contractors, or where could you use temp employees? And then you're going to learn and get educated, and you want to know anyway, like, what is your market share in a client? Who else are they using? What is their entire big picture in recruiting? And then how can you help to solve their problems?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a very easy, like low-hanging fruit question. Super non-threatening. Like, hey, are you guys using contractors at all? Like most companies are going to say yes, especially now.
Yeah.
I think the adoption of contingent, contract, gig, all those types of workers is just going to continue to rise.
Mhm.
But I always try to see if we can like get them to deploy a contract offering when it makes sense for them as like a really easy entry point. So like budget freezes, or maybe they're on like a client's on the fence about a candidate. Hey, let's start them as a contractor. See, like those types of things can use like get that agency to understand the process, and because it they already have a deal very close to the finish line, it's easier to go, and then they understand it and can feel more confident in going forward.
Yeah, yeah. And then another way that it's easier to sell contracting is, I mean, through contractors, you look and see
Yep.
where they've been contracting,
Where have they been? Yeah, for
check
sure.
their references.
Yep. All the old school stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you're helping your customers with that you think is important for like the next 12 months? If you wanted to like say, hey, like I would focus on these areas if I was an agency.
Yes. Well, one of the things, my goal is to help people figure out, like, so I've been figuring out what is the thing that staffing and recruiting agency owners need the most, and how can I help to solve that? So
Yeah.
right now, my most exciting thing that I'm working on is my virtual assistant team. And they're so good, and we're getting amazing referrals and testimonials. So I've been developing a team, and we have integrators, project managers, sourcers, and it's just great. So we're
Nice.
basically helping. We're doing it's the done for you. So
Yeah.
anything from sales support, invoicing, as any kind of admin work,
Yeah.
and then sourcing candidates, things like that. And then so not only do the founders and recruiters get coached by me, the integrators and virtual assistants also get coached. So it's a whole, like,
Cool.
very integrated process
They're all
of,
at the same level, right? Like they're doing the work, not just trying to help you do the work, which is cool.
yeah. So we're like an extension if people need help, whether they need
Yeah.
help with dev or deliverability. And it's been really
Nice.
exciting and working well.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I've seen a huge adoption of the VA type solution in the recruiting and staffing market. It's definitely helps people scale up without having to do some of the things they may not love, which is like build a whole huge company, right? Especially people that are like just are really good at doing recruitment. This can, I think, help them take that next step without going too deep into it. So
Mhm.
I would not be surprised if that new solution that you're building is a big hit.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And we also have in our team automation engineers. So
Oh, okay.
we have biz dev and recruiting automation engineers. So that's another
Nice.
thing that's been really exciting too, is helping
Very
people
cool.
create all their AI. And I mean, everybody, recruiting agencies now and staffing agencies need an engineer. Like, you need a recruiting engineer to help you to understand all the tech stack and figure
The
everything out.
tools, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the tracking of how people are coming in and the sending out of the messages, yeah, and follow-ups, and yeah, there's a lot of that. And if and you can't just set it and forget it, because it gets stale, and
Yes.
it can definitely hurt your brand more than it helps if you're not doing it right.
Right. And you want to make sure to always be adding to your pipeline. So, like, for example, if you're using it
Right.
for biz dev, it's so important, because especially if people are like have a really lean team, then all of a sudden they're working on delivering,
Yeah.
and the pipeline dries up. if
Get
it,
the roller coaster situation.
right. And when we're up, like when the market's hot, that's when
Go
the,
get customers.
yes, the tendency is to back off on biz dev, but that's the
Right?
time, right? You got to keep on getting them so that
Got to
you're,
do it then so that you don't ever face a time where you don't have them. Yep, that's for sure.
yeah,
That's for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's been great talking to you. For the audience, if you found that helpful, I would definitely urge you to reach out to Diane and see if she can help you. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time on how to get away with staffing. Have a great day.
Hi, Colin.
See you later.